Morning, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is prevention. Although we're not maybe going to spend as much actual time on this subject today, that doesn't mean that it's any less important. However, I am mindful that you all have been working very hard on a research paper, and so maybe you can have a few minutes today to pamper yourself, rest and recuperate a little bit from all your work on that. While I, on the other hand, just am getting started on the grading process. So when we wrapped up on Tuesday, we were looking at the challenges inherent in our industry between what is perceived as two separate types of human service work, one being with more individual family small groups, and then that work that is done by folks at the macro level working on community and population advocacy. Again, what we're actually talking about here is two parts of one whole. But today we're going to switch gears and we're going to look at prevention. Again, one of my all-time favorite subjects that I just love to talk about. So why such a focus on prevention? Well, as you can see from the slide in front of you, prevention decreases several key factors: cost, human suffering, and that sense of dislocation or disenfranchisement from the community. And I think most of us today can understand, at least to some degree, that sense of isolation and dislocation from our community, based on the necessary, but the reality of being socially isolated. So prevention does decrease. We know there's lots of data to support that all three of these factors are decreased when there's good prevention. And on the other hand, good prevention improves not only the quality of life, but the empowerment of people in our communities, as well as those individuals, that individual sense of well-being and worthiness, if you will, by members of our community. So there's lots of good reasons to engage in prevention. Prevention is often focused initially or primarily at the macro, don't worry, I'll come back to the slide, at the macro level of planning and intervention. But what happens then is with good prevention, we see a trickle-down impact that actually impacts the individual then and provides them with some level of benefit. Trickle down is a theory that doesn't work in economics, but it does work very well in prevention strategies. And again, I think if we look at our current situation, the more that we prevent, create scenarios and macro level requirements and restrictions on personal movement and personal interaction, what that trickles down to is fewer people get infected, fewer people die, less use of our healthcare systems, etc. So we're living through some really great lab times. Understand that when we talk about prevention, we're actually talking about there are three official different forms of prevention. The first is what we traditionally, I think everyone thinks of when we hear the term prevention, and that is we stop the problem before it happens. We've prevented it. Great. Vaccines are a great example of that. You get a shot, it prevents you from having that condition. Worst case scenario, you might get the condition, but it won't be as bad, which leads us to the secondary level of prevention, which is finding a problem early and treating it to minimize the seriousness, to minimize the total impact of the condition. One of the best examples of that would be early childhood intervention programs, things like Parents as Teachers. any zero to school program. What those programs are doing is they're looking at children very early, and they're looking for physical deficits, learning deficits, communication deficits, all kind, they're looking to see, is there a problem? Now, obviously the problem can't be prevented if it's found, but the earlier that there is intervention, the less total impact the condition's going to have. It's much better to start working with a child at 2 who has perhaps a communication deficit than waiting till that child is 5 or 6. There's going to be a lot more damage. There's going to be a lot more ground to try and catch up on, and it's just going to make things more difficult, if not impossible, to get that child up to speed. The third level of prevention is actually what civilians refer to as rehabilitation, the tertiary level of prevention. And that is where, okay, a problem has happened. But what we can do now is with intervention is perhaps keep other problems from occurring. Again, here's a simple example. Somebody has a stroke. Can't prevent it, it's already happened. But through rehab, be it vocational, language, physical, what you can do is you can potentially prevent that person from having mobility issues going forward. You may prevent them from not being able to communicate. You're trying to prevent all those things that might occur as a result of this initial problem. Very quickly, I'm going to give you this slide which walks you through the process of prevention. This is going to look very familiar, especially to those of you who have been in the policy class, because it is shades of the problem-solving method. I'm looking at my timer, hopefully, and I think I'm just about out of time. So I think what I will do is go ahead and stop this video. Based on what I see on the discussion board with questions and comments, if there's need, I'll come back next week with an additional video, but we'll play that one by ear. So I will see you guys on the discussion board, and then I want you all to take at least a few minutes to reward yourself for the hard work you did on your research papers. And while you're doing that, think of me doing my part of the hard work on the research papers. See you soon.